Hello and welcome to Jennifer Knatters, my video podcast. I am Jennifer and I will be nattering usually for about an hour. I once upon a time managed to do this in half an hour and I now don't have any idea how I did that. It has just started raining, so if you can hear that on the roof, I hope you like it. There's not a lot I can do about the weather. This is northern Scotland. It rains a fair bit. Returning viewers will see that I now have a very bright light shining on me. I found my little purple lamp. We're going to see if this is better than kind of sitting in the dark was going. Also, I have jingly earrings, so if those are causing noise, I won't wear them again. I mean, it's going to be a year before jingly jack-o'-lantern earrings come out anyway. I actually bought these in the hope that I could turn them into cheap stitch markers, and I wore them out on Thursday and I got so many compliments that I think I'll have to wait and see. I got them at Tesco, so if Tesco has them on clearance in early November, I may pick up another pair to turn into stitch markers and keep one pair to be earrings. Anyway, as I said, my name is Jennifer and we are here to talk about knitting. Today is the 26th of October. Sorry, my notes are over here to my side. Today is the 26th of October. It has been a little over 2 weeks. I think it was the 8th the last time I recorded. And I have a lot to show you. Starting with my first finished object. It's doing weird things in my shoulders. But I have a finished object, which is my purple pullover here. Oh, see, the lights can do funny things with the autofocus. This is my custom fit Alta, which is a pattern and program. Custom Fit is Amy Herzog's web-based app where you can put in your swatch information and your measurements and then get a custom generated pattern based on your stitches and the measurements that you want to knit to. You get a unique pattern based just on that. Excuse me. And Alta is one of Amy Herzog's patterns, so she does have some free recipes up on her website. You can either buy the pattern with standard sizing and everything, and you know, the standard range of sizes, or you can buy a custom pattern and then there's a recipe that says, you know, generate this kind of pullover, you'll want this kind of ribbing for this many, you know, this deep, stuff like that to get a recipe. And then the recipe says cast on an extra so many stitches for the front to have room for the cable. So those are both her babies, and this is my jumper, and this is knit in Jamie Possum Plus, which is a New Zealand yarn that I got at Loch Ness Knit Festival last year, Loch Ness Festival 2018. And I didn't quite finish it in time to wear to Loch Ness Knit Festival 2019, although I wouldn't have anyway, because I tend to think of knit festivals as being quite warm. But it was actually a bit chilly there, and if I had finished it, I would have been thinking, oh, that would have been so warm and cozy to wear. But yeah, so I finished this with yarn I bought a year ago. I could not be happier with it. It is so warm and snuggly. I'm just wearing a nursing bra, a sleep nursing bra, so I do not have quite the oomph. I don't know why my shoulders are now doing that. I don't care. It's wonderful and cozy and warm. So that is my first finished object. My second finished object I don't have to show you. I showed you last week my Hubble Bubble Double Trouble socks in West Yorkshire Spinners Aire Valley DK. And they are black and orange stripy socks with jack-o'-lanterns, alternating contrast jack-o'-lanterns on the heels. I finished them, I think, the next day after the podcast. I've been wearing them a lot since then, and they have felted a little bit, but in a way where like the black threads are kind of streaking across the orange threads, so they're not dirty, but they look really kind of worn already. So it's probably just as well they're wear them for a couple weeks, once a year socks. So I didn't have time to clean those up before tonight. I left those in the room where my 2-year-old is sleeping. If you don't know me, I live in northern Scotland with my 2 children. I've got a 6-year-old and a 2-year-old, my husband, and 2 cats. So the socks are in the room with the 2-year-old, and I didn't want to risk going back to look for them because they were under a pile of clean laundry. I know where they are, I just didn't grab them. But those are finished, and I've been wearing them, and they're very cute and very cool, and unfortunately I didn't really have a chance to wear them to anything before October half term. So for 2 weeks there hasn't been any school, there hasn't been any of the classes I do with my toddler, and we've all had head colds, so we've basically been sat home going, oh, we all feel so terrible, with my children going, I want to do something, but they feel terrible, so can't do anything. And now I'm feeling terrible, so they want to do things, and I'm like, no, I can't do anything. So yeah, socks, I finished them, didn't really get a chance to show them off. And my next finished object is also a pair of socks. Here they are right next to me. And these are my, too bright. There we go. That's kind of the real color. I'm trying to remember what the color name was. Something Regalta. Don't even really know what that is. These are, the yarn is Lay Family Yarns, and I picked this up at Perth Knit Festival back in September. And this jumper, this pullover, I cast on in March, 16 March, finished at 26 October today. I did the neckband, everything else was done before we went on a holiday, I think. It wasn't really a holiday. And these were cast on 19th September, we finished 25th October. The Halloween socks I cast on last year and then set them aside and then just finished them this year. So yeah, these are my Regalta socks, and this is the Lemieux pattern. That's just too bright. How can I do this? It's the Lemieux pattern. So it has an forethought heel, but it's worked with 2 sets of decreases to give it a square heel, and it does have a bit of a gusset here. Ooh, that light's not doing good things. A bit of a gusset here to decrease. So you get the afterthought heel with a lot more of the anatomically correct fit of a heel flap and gusset. This is the first one that I'd finished, and I have worn a few times with my pink sock whose mate got lost half knit. But I have, because I knit one of those to be a left foot and one of them to be the right foot, so I was wearing them together. But I did finish the second one. This stitch marker shows where I was last time we spoke. So let's see if I bring it back over here. Where can you see it? Haha, stitch marker. So I just started the gusset decreases. I had not yet worked the heel based on my stitch count for this one. For the first sock, the pattern recommends that you stop some point after the gusset decreases, go back and work the heel so that you can have an accurate measurement of how long you want your sock to be. This one I did the length based on the first sock, so I just knit the toe and then went back and did the heel. And that was basically yesterday. I knit the toe and the heel and finished those off. So those were cast on in September and finished the 25th of October, which was yesterday. So I now have a fuzzy warm pair of socks. I have not blocked them or woven in the ends, but sometimes I don't. Sometimes I put on a pair of socks I know I finished like 2 years ago and they still don't have the ends woven in. I am a rebel. So then I have some, well, I suppose I can show you really quick my scrappy blanket. I have done another row, starting with this rainbow one, medium purple, the bright pink, speckled, I don't know, sea green, new leaf green, this kind of tonal purple, this stripy one, and then this is a pale kind of speckle one. So that brings my blanket to 7 by 7. Whee, 7 by 7. And I'll put it back on my lap. I've got a lot to get through today, so I don't have a lot of time to bore you on any one particular thing. So we took a train down to Edinburgh 2 weeks ago, which was a trip down. There's the US consulate in Edinburgh to register the birth of my now 2.5-year-old. She'll be 3 in January. And I finally got around to telling the government that she exists. The US government, the UK government obviously knows from the time she was born, or when we registered her birth within, I'd say, a week of her being born. Anyway, we finally told the US government about her. And my other socks, the stitch marker was on the gusset decreases. So that's where it was. I'd have the gusset decreases, the toe decreases, the heel, which I'm not that familiar with because I've only done 2 of them, 1 on each foot. I suppose I'd only done 1 of them at the time. So I would have needed to consult the pattern for that one. So I cast on a new pair of socks for my husband. He's been saying lately how much he really likes the hand knit socks even more than like West Yorkshire Spinners. These are West Yorkshire Spinner socks that I've made for him. They sell pre-made socks, and the ones I make him are more comfortable, he says. So I knit him a pair of socks. And we took the train down on Monday. We went to the consulate on Tuesday. We took the train back on Wednesday. And when we got home, I'd actually knit ever so slightly past where the toe is with just some yarn in for the heel. So then I put the heel in, measured the sock, pulled it back a row or 2 because I had just started the next band of color, which would have been the blue. I had like a row and a half of the blue. So I pulled that out and put the toe in. And then I took them on Saturday. I went to Loch Ness Knit Festival. So again, I wanted something really easy to work on. So I started the second one. I think maybe I hadn't finished the heel on this one quite yet, but I started the next sock again so I'd have something super easy to work on. And I have turned the heel. This one I just did as a short row heel as I was going. And away we go. And this is just a vanilla sock pattern. The one I don't look at it anymore. I just know my stitch counts, but the one mine is based on is from Sock Anatomy by Claire Devine, which I've mentioned before and will no doubt mention again. And she has this pattern as both a toe up and a toe down. And it is in fact written for West Yorkshire Spinners. The blue tip might even be the colorway that she used for the adult socks. The book originally came out with all baby and toddler socks. They were all really cute. And then she went back and added adult sizes. This one was an afterthought heel. This one is a short row heel, which means I knit it in the way. Why do one versus the other? Well, if you're on a train and you only bought a very small length of spare thread to mark where you think the heel should go, then you put an afterthought heel in and come back to it later. Whereas if you get to where you're going to put the heel and your baby has just gone to sleep and you've got an hour or 2 before your bedtime, go ahead and put in an afterthought heel and then it's done. So that's why sometimes I do one and sometimes I do the other. They do look slightly different, but in my experience they feel largely the same. Certainly my husband hasn't complained about having different heels because usually I wind up doing one on one and the other on the other. These are top down socks, whereas normally I would do toe up socks. But when I do toe up socks, I usually have 2 different ribs as well because I can never remember what I did on the first sock when it comes time to do it. So I have finished a sock and half a sock. So that's there. And then I finally cast on the project for this month, I almost said this month's Boost Your Knitting project, which is, I'm going to look up what it's called, the Marangoni hat by Tori Seierstad. Probably pronouncing that wrong, I'm very sorry. And this month's technique is joining in colors joining in yarns. And I've only watched one video, which is how to splice yarns together, which is something I already do. About to change colors, so that's the green one, and then I'll just unpick a little bit back, and then it's the next shade of blue for another set of these half bubbles. Marangoni is I'm going to explain this wrong. It's named for the person, and it describes why bubbles are bubbles, like the surface tension, why bubbles exist. So once we're past the green line, it'll be the other half of the round orb, just in the next shade of blue. And can I say how much I love this color progression in the rib? So if you know me, you probably know that this green and this orange, not really my colors. This one is intended, I mean, unless my husband sees it and falls in love and demands to have it, this one is intended for the cousins who have moved here to Inverness and have a shortage of things like hats and mittens and gloves, and have been getting a lot of my Boost Your Knitting projects, which is fine for when you don't necessarily pick the project and the yarn, but you want to do it along with the group. So if it's something that doesn't suit us, I just say, oh, it's for the cousins. And even if it is something where my kids would be like, no, I want that. I'm like, no, can't have it. It's for the cousins. You have lots of hats. They don't have any. Having finished this pullover, I did swatch for another one, but that's as far as I've gotten. And since I have a lot to go on tonight, I'm not going to slow down and talk about that at all. So next up, I went to Loch Ness Knit Festival, and I bought some wool. I bought a lot of wool. I had fun. Buying wool is not the only way to have fun as a knitter. Knitting obviously is pretty high up there. I'll just dump this all out. So in the acquisitions, one thing to mention first is I got this bag, and now I'm trying to remember from whom I got it. It came with a little bookmark, which is very cute, made out of the same fabric. I'm just checking to see if I put the tag in the bag, which is a thing I normally would do. This bit, oh, that's very white. I'm very sorry for that. I only just looked at the camera. So this is the bag, which is a good sized tote bag, and there are little cats in the trees watching birds. Both of my children have thought that was so cute. And then it's got this, it's off-white, but it's coming off very bright, which is a drawstring lining. So you can have the bag open, but then you can have it heaped with lots of stuff that won't fall out. So I thought this was a very useful style project bag, and I am going to be keeping, the plan is to keep my mini balls, thank you, my minis for my scrap yarn blanket, because I now have a lot. So I got that, and then a very kind knitter online who lives nearby here in Scotland was not able to come to Loch Ness Knit Festival like she has in the past, but she did send me a whole bunch. I really hate calling them minis. These are all Ripples Crafts yarns that she has used to make socks. And I mean, like this one, some of them have got to be, like honestly, if this is 50 grams, I wouldn't be surprised, but it's got to be at least 40. I mean, these are all 30 to 40 grams. And I had asked, I know she's a prolific knitter of socks and shawls, if she'd had any like 5 to 10. 5 grams is enough for my blanket. But she sent me these enormous balls, so I'll put them to good use. So yes, those were gifted to me for my My first minis gifted to me. And then I went to Loch Ness Knit Festival. So I will show you some of, well, I'll show you everything, but I'll do this really quick. From Dye Ninja, who is a Scottish dyer who's at all the shows, but I don't tend to buy much from her because she is very much a luxury dyer. Come back here. This, for example, is her camel silk. This is this is most of the money I spent was for these two things, and this is one of her Ninja Pops, and these are 13 10-gram minis. So it's 130 grams. This is the Rainbow Grenade. I am somewhat less interested in these colors as I am these colors, but that plus the gray I thought would make a really nice rainbow. I mean, I may include the orange and the gold and just not have some of these greenies or this kind of bronzy. But yes, love that, absolutely love that. And I'm gonna make something completely luxurious. I know I say don't wear shawls, but I think a shawl in this would just be something to cuddle up in. This is in no particular order, by the way. From Unique Yarns, I got these 3 minis. There's 2 50s and a 20. And this one is a sparkle. And then there's a hot pink, and this one, which is coming out a bit bluer than it actually is, but it really does glow, doesn't it? This one I think is a good match for the pink socks where I lost the second in progress sock. So if I need a little extra, this is currently my best bet for that one. So that's Unique Yarns. And then I got a bunch of minis from, sorry for the crinkling, Mothy and the Squid. So I've got this gray rainbow one, and then I got 3 sparkly ones. There's a blue and black, a purple and black, and then just a purples one and a plain purple one. So these are 20-gram minis from Mothy and the Squid. I had bought a set of her minis, a rainbow speckle set, at Perth Festival of Yarn. Like for instance, I know it's that purple and that purple. It was a rainbow, it's going to be that green. So a rainbow set of those. She did have a rainbow set of solids, so it was like this color blue, this color purple in the sparkles. And I thought about it, but then I decided to just go for the Wild and Crazies. I was thinking of letting Christina pick one of these colors each, like if she'd rather have, I think she'd go for this one, but and knit her like a cowl, because purple is currently her favorite color, and a 20-gram mini would probably make a really good size cowl for a 6-year-old. And then she'd have something small to wear around her neck that she can just put in her coat pocket. But we'll see if I can bear to let them go. I've got other things in purple that I can do the same thing in. I got 3 minis. Yep, these are 20-gram minis again. And these are 100% BFL from watercolors and lace. So these are all really pretty, and you can see their watercolor influence. So this is to help my blanket go a lot more purple, because a lot more purple is always pleasing. I didn't get too much from Ripple's Crafts this time. This one I've already skeined up, and this is her occasional 4-ply base, which has the neps in it. And this one has rainbow neps. So there's pink, blue, yellow, green. You get all the different colors. And this is just a blue-gray kind of faded denim-y color called Always Climbing Trees. But it's on a base that she's not currently doing, so it was in her sale one. And I think this is going to make a cowl, and I even know which one, so I've got needles for it and everything. We'll talk about that if I actually get it cast on. This is to knit a pair of socks for my husband, because these are colors that I think he would like. And I also think he would like a wildly colorful one. So these are intended to be husband socks. And then I picked up this skein of a navy blue. I was looking for something that was this shade of purple to do the seaming up in, because it's a fluffy DK stroke Aire weight yarn. And if I stitched it up, I worried that the fuzz rubbing against the fuzz would kind of pull the thread, put it under tension, make it not strong, and also be very bulky. So I was looking for a really plummy purple that I could use to match it up. And Helen normally has things like that, but she didn't today. So I got this 50-gram skein of, this is 100% BFL, Blue Faced Leicester, because I figured dark would be better than a lighter color. I mean, you can't see the thread you use to sew it up with, but just in case any showed through, dark is harder to see than light. And then when I got home, I remembered that the purple opal I had used to knit my husband's Heart Guile socks earlier in the Boost Your Knitting Year of Techniques, that was in Tarja in the round, is basically exactly this color. So I have 50 grams of BFL in navy, which I will not have trouble finding something to do with. And then it was not, this is in no particular order, but I also went to Hey Penny Makes, and this is a self-striping yarn with contrast heel, because I knew I was almost done with the Regalta socks and I was ready to cast on another. And then I also got this stitch marker from her, which she wound up including for free, because she had missed it when initially doing it. And I said, oh, make sure you did you get that? And she was like, oh, I didn't. And then she couldn't get her card reader to let her go back and do a different thing. And she was like, no money, just take it. I don't even know how much it was. There wasn't a price on them. But I got the self-striping blues, kind of tealy blues and purples with this kind of lavender. And then she also had scrappy yarn packs. And this is just a sock base, 75 superwash merino, 25% nylon, 5-gram bobbins. So they are all, flip that one over. So each one of these should do 1 square for my blanket. Lots of different colors. And I told my husband that this, between this and the advent calendars that I have ordered, one of which has arrived. I think I've only got 2 coming. You're like, shouldn't you know for sure? I'm like, yes, I really should. There's one more that's coming. The one I ordered was by a dyer, and the other one is someone on Etsy who is selling sets of her minis as an advent calendar. She's not a dyer, it's just leftovers from her various projects. So that one is yet to come. And I got my next set of socks. It will probably be my next set of socks. I don't know, we'll see. We will see what is easy to grab when I run out of sock yarn. It is entirely possible I will do another set of socks that are in a ball to knit just straight up and down socks. And then I can do slightly fancier ones. There's an alpaca in the bottom of this bag. Doot, 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 doot. That explains why I couldn't find the 3rd alpaca. I had it. My 2-year-old took that with us when we went out and so I stuck it in my knitting bag so she wouldn't lose it. That was fast and dirty, and we got through it. I am going to pause right here. We're just at the half-hour mark. I'm going to pause. I'm going to have a good cough, drink some of my throat tea. This is an herbal tea that's supposed to be good for throats. Suck on my cough lozenge earlier. I put it in and then realized I absolutely cannot talk coherently with a throat lozenge in my mouth. You would never understand. I'd be like, oh, bleh, bleh. That's probably going to be the default image for the caption now. But we'll take a little tea break, drink some tea, come back, talk amongst ourselves. Hello again. That wasn't a very long break for me either. So we're moving on to family stuff now. Possibly should have mentioned that before the break, so you didn't have to stick around if that's not something you're interested in. But family stuff. So since last we spoke 2 weeks ago, we went down to Edinburgh by train, and it actually went really well. One of the things about kids is that basically every time you go anywhere with them, it's a little bit easier. Not so much because they're more used to it, but because they're just a little bit older. They're a little bit more patient. They're a little bit more grown up. My 2.5-year-old, last time we went somewhere, she was, well, it would have been last Easter time. So she was just over 2. Now she's almost 3. That makes a big difference. Basically, it meant I didn't have to hold her. She still needed me to do things for her, but I didn't have to do it with her in my lap. So I was able to get a lot of knitting done on the trip. And we had paid for first class tickets both ways. And it was expensive, but it was worth it because both trains going up and coming down wound up having the seat reservations canceled. And then we had to pick up people from another train that had wound up being canceled. So it was hugely crowded and there was no room and lots of jostling. And first class means you just still have a little bit more room. They round up declassifying first class for the way back. Although the last time we went on a trip, which was last Easter when they did that, like they went on our tickets that they declassified it so you could get the difference back, which we didn't because we still got the value of our first class. Even if they let people who did not pay for first class sit there, that did not in any way diminish the value we received for what we had paid. Sorry, I thought I heard footsteps. Most likely a cat, because if it was a child, there would be crying to go with it at this time of night. So yeah. So it was completely worth it to pay the extra money for first class, especially because the 2-year-old doesn't get her own seat at this point. I mean, we plunk her in a seat and we're like, there you go, there's your seat. But she doesn't have a seat reservation or anything. So if we had been in the more crowded place and had less room, like there have been times traveling when the older one was a small baby where they were like, yeah, no, there's no room. She has to sit in your lap. And you're like, okay, but I have a suitcase and a nappy bag and a lunch bag and a 2-year-old and there's not room in my lap. Plus being able to give her the things she needs so she doesn't scream the whole way because she's bored and she's hungry and she's crabby and she needs her nappy changed and like all the things that little kids need. Suddenly you don't have a place. So if you have the money for it, it can be really worth it. Although on the way down there was a gentleman who clearly thought that his first class ticket should entitle him to not have to travel with children. But I'm sorry, sir, that is just... Children exist and they have to travel, and they were not badly behaved. I mean, they weren't angels who sat there quietly and never moved and were never loud or anything, but they were not badly behaved. They were getting a bit antsy towards the last hour. It's a 3.5-hour train ride. They got antsy. There was ants in the pants dancing around and all sorts of stuff, but they were never badly behaved. There was no real whinging. There was no crying. There was no carrying on. They were really well behaved for the ages they are. the other person who was in first class with us was like, oh no, they were brilliant, but this other gentleman was a bit so such is the nature of life. But yeah, I got to do a lot of knitting on the way down. I got to do a lot of knitting the whole 3 days, really. We were staying at the Premier Inn, which is just behind the Waverley station, like below the Royal Mile. But anyway, we were staying there, and we had a lovely view of the train station, which may not be everyone's cup of tea, but it is definitely the cup of tea for 6 and 2-year-olds to be able to look out the window and see the trains go by. We weren't so close that you could hear them too much, but you could definitely see them, and that was lots of fun. And I mean, if you want a hotel that's clean and, I don't know, basic and quiet and like all that stuff, that is a really good hotel for a very utilitarian. It's not a utilitarian hotel, it's just like a very basic hotel with no particular frills. A very solid hotel, let's call it that. A very solid, you want a bed and someplace quiet and food in the morning. That's what you get. So we stayed there, and I let the kids run up and down the hall, but only between the hours of like 10 and 6, because they're small children, and even though they had colds and were not feeling the best, they do have lots of energy and they need to run around. So I let them jump on the beds and run up and down the hall, and I wouldn't let them do that kind of stuff after 6 o'clock because people might be trying to sleep. But between 10 and 6, I'm sorry if you're jet lagged and you're trying to sleep in the middle of the day in the place you are, it's the middle of the day, there's going to be noise. So that was fine. And on the Tuesday before we went to our appointment was at 2:30. So we went to the Dynamic Earth in the morning, which is right next to Holyrood. And, well, not right next to Holyrood, but it's over by the Scottish Parliament, and it's near Holyrood. And they had a good time most of it. There was Open University had tables there where they were doing different science things to kind of show kids science and, you know, like, hey, come be interested in our field of study. Here's how it applies to small children. And it was really well done. Although there was a hands-on exhibit that Catherine was a little too enthusiastic about it, and they were like, please stop banging the rocks together. They're actually quite delicate. So we had to move her to a different table. They had a spot that was more for, like, they're like, please bang these rocks together. These rocks are for banging, not those. Yeah, they were not quite prepared for Catherine's level of enthusiasm, which is high. It is very high. And then when we actually went to the proper Dynamic Earth, basically Tulip, my 6-year-old, not her real name, had one long claustrophobic panic attack. And so we got escorted through the back hallways where only, you know, like we had to get a manager to come and walk us through the back hallways because she wouldn't go in the lift. And then she even found the rest of it was too overwhelming. So we basically went to the exit. We're like, hi. And they're like, go this way, go that way, go quickly, and you're out. So that was a big whopping waste of money. I mean, it's not their fault. And certainly, I mean, I imagine if I had gone up to the thing and been like, yeah, no, we were in and out in 5 seconds because she was too scared, that they would have given us at least a partial refund. But it is what it is. Because we visited when we did, our ticket was automatically converted to an annual pass. Not that we're likely to be in Edinburgh in the next 12 months, but if we do, we could go back and try it again, and that would at least get us into the little playroom off of there's the gift shop downstairs on the other side, and it has a little soft playroom, so you get into that free. Otherwise it'd be £2 for an hour or something. Anyway, they liked that part, and they liked the Open University tables, and they liked their edible straws. So It sufficiently passed the time until it was time for us to walk over to the consulate. I definitely felt sore after our 3 days, or 1 full day and 2 half days in Edinburgh. Like, I felt properly sore. And when I checked my Fitbit, I did not do, I mean, I was down a couple hundred steps on my normal week, but I think it was that I had done them all. Well, I didn't even do it all in 1 day. It was the hills. Edinburgh has a lot more up and down than I'm used to. And I did it all carrying Catherine. I forgot her carrier. But for some reason, it didn't hurt me the way when Christina was about the same size, just a little bit older, but about the same size. We went to Amsterdam, and I hadn't brought her carrier, and she insisted on being carried everywhere, and it absolutely destroyed my wrists. Like, I actually saw a picture recently where I'm like, hey, look, there's my wrists all bandaged up because they were in so much pain that I could not move them, and I needed them physically restrained so I wouldn't accidentally move them. So I don't know why carrying Catherine was easier. She certainly doesn't cuddle in, and you're like, oh, I'm going to carry you, like, cuddle in. She's like, what? But all small children do that. They don't understand about the physics of being close. Excuse me. So we went to the consulate, and the consulate versus the U.S. Embassy. From what I've heard about the U.S. Embassy, and this is all based on the old building before they built the enormous, expensive new building that like has its own moat and stuff. We walked by the embassy once on accident. We were just walking along, and suddenly we're walking past a place with a fence around with spiky points and people standing in front with Uzis. And I'm like, oh yeah, the U.S. Embassy. I've heard about that. The consulate in Edinburgh is not that at all. It's a townhouse on a ritzy road with a U.S. flag hanging out front, and the steps leading up to the front door have one of those little lift chairs. And otherwise, it looks exactly the same. As you walk up to it, someone opens the door, and it's definitely a security person, but he was not visibly armed in the way that having Marines with Uzis standing in front of the U.S. Embassy are. I wouldn't want to swear that he was unarmed, but I didn't notice if he was armed. And we had to hand over the sheet saying we had an appointment, and everyone had to show ID, and he wanted our phones. Anything capable of sending an email was what he wanted. So, if I brought, I'm trying to think if a Kindle would be allowed in, but he didn't want my Fitbit, or he wouldn't have wanted electronic key fobs or anything like that. And you cannot take any of that stuff into the U.S. Embassy. And he put them in a little cubby hole and gave us a claim ticket, which is also not what they do at the U.S. Embassy. You have to go and rent a locker down the road and leave all your stuff in, I think it's like a Walgreens or a CVS pharmacy or something. But yeah, it's so civilized. And then you just go in a little sitting room, and basically as soon as we walked in, someone called our number. So I went up and blah, 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 blah. And they're like, okay, great. Here's all your stuff. The only slight hiccup was that my passport has expired, and that is my form of ID. And the only other form of ID I have is my UK biometric residence permit, which I showed to the lady, and she was like, it doesn't have a signature. And I'm like, oh, but it does have a signature. It's on the front, but I guess she'd looked on the back for a signature. It's clearly me. It clearly it's the same name. It matches my passport. It's just my passport expired on my birthday back in May, end of May. I started looking for appointments to register Catherine's birth off and on a year ago, over the summer last year, 2018. So no, I didn't particularly notice that my passport had expired. I just hadn't been thinking about it, and we haven't flown anywhere since I was pregnant with Catherine. So, but yeah, they did all the things, and they said, that's great, here's your fee. And I said, oh, actually, I only got one ticket for an appointment, but I have 2 appointments because I also have appointment for my other child to renew her passport, which also expired around the same time mine did. They're like, oh, okay, well, give me that stuff too. So I handed it over, and then we had to wait for a while while they actually went and checked everything. And we waited and waited and waited and waited. There were no crazy people this time. Last time the place was full of crazy people who all needed passports because they were flying in 2 weeks. Their trip was in 2 weeks and they needed their passport so they could, as a U.S. citizen, you have to enter the U.S. on a U.S. passport. So you have to register your child's birth and get a passport and then fly back to the U.S. I have friends who did not do it that way, and it caused so many problems. Anyway, that is the law. That is legally what is required of you. Excuse me. So there are lots of people where they're like, I need my passport. When's your flight? It's in 2 weeks. And they're like, we can't guarantee your passport in 2 weeks. It can take up to 5 weeks. And they're like, no, we have to have it or we'll miss our flights. It was a lot of that. And the people who were working there were just like, and when our appointment finally got called, when we did this with Tulip, when she was a baby, when we got up and they're like, okay, well, when's your flight? And I said, oh, we haven't booked it yet. We were waiting to get our passports and then book the flights. And I swear to God, the woman I was dealing with looked like she was going to reach through the glass and kiss me. If there hadn't been several inches of glass between us and one of those little like bank teller things where you pass things through, I swear she looked like she was just going to reach out and kiss me right on the lips. She just was like, wow, I love you. So yeah, get your passport, then book your flight. You'll make the people who work in the consulate happy. Yep, so eventually they said, here you go, here's all your stuff back, here's your things, fairly well. And we gathered all of our stuff up. The children were a bit crabby during all of this. It had been a long couple of days and they had colds, and waiting in a consulate is not fun. It is, like in the US, it would be like sitting at the DMV. You sit there in some chairs. There aren't enough chairs for the people who are there, and you just wait for someone to call your name. Although when they did call my name, they were calling, my last name is Aves, my married name. And they're calling, Miss Aves. And I was saying to my husband later, like, I didn't realize they were calling my name. We've been married 8 years now, which is long enough that I do hear Aves as my name, but not long enough that I hear all of the ways to mispronounce Aves as my name. Like, my maiden name was Kavanagh, and if someone even starts to be like, Ms. Cat, and I'm like, that's me. Hi. You started and then you realized you had no idea where to go from there? Hi, right over here. Ms. Kavanagh, what? Yeah, no, that's me. I know what those all sound like. Especially, honestly, the number of times you get a cold caller and they'd be like, hello, is Mr. Cav... And I'll be like, we don't do unsolicited businesses over the phone. Thank you. Click. They had no idea who they were talking to. So yeah. It has not been my name long enough for me to have internalized all the ways that someone could mispronounce my name. So I didn't register at first that this new person was calling what was supposed to be my name. But yeah, we finished that all up, and then we walked down to Princess Street, and we went to one of the hotels on that side. I think, I can't remember it's a big chain of hotels, but we went there and we had afternoon tea, which was very nice for me and my husband. And the kids were, again, they were a little bored. There were not very many other people. They were basically just like, don't touch any of the cutlery on the tables. But there were tables near us that they weren't set. They were just a table and chairs. They weren't set for a meal. I'm like, you can play on those tables, not these tables, those tables, because otherwise they have to clear away all the cutlery and reset the table, and that is not a nice thing to do to people. We let them just kind of roll around on the floor and watch all the trams and the buses go by, and we had a very nice afternoon tea, and then we went back to the hotel room and let the kids jump up and down on the beds and run up and down the halls, because that's what they needed, and watch pad. We brought one pad with us on the train. So we did tell them there was no internet, so they couldn't watch YouTube or anything, but they could play games and do different things. So one pad was enough, although next time we travel, we'll probably need two. Excuse me, sorry. And then on the Wednesday, we went to the portrait gallery, which again is on Princess Street. It's right there by the train station. We dropped our bags, left luggage, and we went there, and Christina basically went, Tulip, my 6-year-old, went, I don't like this, I'm bored, I'm hungry, let's go, through the whole place, which was kind of embarrassing. And I'm like, shut up, some people are trying to enjoy this. And Catherine went, wee, look at all the nice things to touch. And I went, don't touch, don't touch, don't touch. And she went, what, don't do this? And, you know, because she's Catherine and she's enthusiastic, and that's what Catherine does. So I wasn't very sympathetic that they were hungry, because I'm like, I'm the only one who ate breakfast. I got you very nice breakfast, the food you said you wanted, and I sat them down, and they didn't particularly eat. So of course they were hungry an hour or two later. But we went downstairs to the restaurant under the National Portrait Gallery. We'd eaten at the cafe before, but we'd never been in the restaurant, and the cafe is closed right now. And we had the most delicious food and the best fresh squeezed orange juice I've ever had in the UK. Most of the time they say fresh squeezed orange juice and they give you a Tropicana. And you're like, but you said fresh squeezed. And they're like, yes, look, it says right on the box, fresh squeezed. That is literally a conversation I've had with waitstaff here in the UK. Like, it doesn't mean what you think it means. Delicious fresh squeezed orange juice. Really yummy food. I was full, so I didn't even order any food. But yeah. And then we went back to the train station, and we went to a kind of courtyard that wasn't very busy, and we just sat down with the children and let them run around and sit on the floor and doodle, and we're like, nope, we tried. Nothing else to do. Although some friends of mine have said that the History Museum, is that what it is? Anyway, there's another museum that is also relatively close to the train station and is apparently appropriate for children in a way that the National Portrait Gallery is not. Christina's Tulip is really into drawing and art, so I thought she might like to look at some of the pretty pictures, but no, she did not. She was not here for that. So yeah, that was our Edinburgh trip. The train ride back, again, they weren't checking tickets, and then we picked up passengers from another train that had been canceled, and it was just chaos, except in our nice little first class booth where, you know, we sat, and occasionally they even could get the trolley through the cars to bring us a snack. But I always bring snacks. I am the kind of person who, when we're on a train ride, I will stop at the WH Smith in the train station. There's always a WH Smith, and I'm buying sandwiches, and I'm buying crisps, and I'm buying drinks, and I'm buying fruit, because I believe train rides are easier if you are well fed. And the trolley is almost always like, oh, can I buy a sandwich? Oh, I only had 3 sandwiches to start with, and sure enough, they've already been purchased. And you're like, oh, wonderful, yay. So yeah. And then the one downside to the whole trip was when we were leaving the U.S. consulate, that I actually had time to look around and pay attention, and on the wall behind the metal detector was an enormous portrait of Trump and a reasonably large portrait of Pence and a portrait of the man I presume is the U.S. ambassador to the UK. But yeah, the portrait of Trump, and I was just like, not thrilled to be an American. Feeling dirty now. As an American living in the US, or not living in the US, an American living in the UK, like, I know Trump is president, But that was just real in a way that for the most part, it kind of isn't. I don't know. Like, I don't interact with him as my president in any way, except there his portrait was on the wall. It was not a good feeling. Excuse me, I just have to cough for a minute. Sorry about that. So we came back from Edinburgh, and Catherine had had a cold over the weekend, and then the 3 days we were down there. Sorry, I blew my nose, but like pressure's moving around inside my head. And then Tulip caught the cold, I think for the train ride down. I can't remember if she had it on the Sunday or not, but she definitely had it on Monday for the train ride down. And Chris had it when we were coming back. And then I didn't catch it till this week, which is fortunate because I did go to Loch Ness Knit Festival on Saturday. I guess they had classes Wednesday, Thursday, and the market was open Friday, Saturday. Or maybe they did a thing Wednesday night and then they had classes Thursday, Friday, Saturday. Anyway, the marketplace, which was what I was interested in, was open on the Friday and the Saturday. So I went on Saturday and I saw a couple people who I know, online Scottish knitters. And unfortunately for the vendors and the event, the marketplace was really slow. I thought when I got there that, it was like 11 on Sunday morning that I just beat the rush. The rush never came. That was actually shortly after I got there was pretty much the busiest I had seen it, the busiest it was, which is bad for vendors. It's good for wanting to have a look around and actually like talk to vendors. I talked quite a bit to Helen and Stephen, which is Ripples Crafts, and her partner, and I got to talk to a couple other people who I didn't know but was able to say hello to, and Emily K. Williams Designs was there with Julie of Black Isle Knits, so I got to hang out with her for a bit, which I haven't gotten to do in a long time. So yeah, it was a really good one for socializing with the people who were there, and not such a great one for vendors wanting to sell a lot. One of the reasons I bought some very expensive yarn from Dye Ninja that I'd been eyeing but had never bought was she was saying how the whole year had basically been really slow, and with the Brexit uncertainty, people just aren't wanting to spend money. And I was like, I feel bad for you, I will now buy things. She has lovely yarns. I would certainly not call it a pity purchase, but it was definitely, I was spurred on by the whole like, oh no, I feel bad. Which I told, I think it was Emily, but it might have been Claire, that like my strategy is buy all the things, and then if everything goes to hell in a handbasket, I have enough knitting to keep me going, as opposed to hoard your money and then, try to buy things after, I guess, when the new economy settles in. But speaking of Brexit, oh my goodness, twice this week I have tried to buy something only to find out that you couldn't pay with a card. The card machines were down. And one of them was when we were at Asda. And so basically everybody was all of a sudden told, like, you have to pay cash for all your groceries. So people were going outside to use, they had 2 cash points outside, and one of the cash points ran out of money. And then the other cash point went down as well because it was the bank's thing. It wasn't a problem with the store or with Asda's. It was a bank thing. So it's just like, oh good. This is, when they talk about like the Brexit date is currently Halloween, that's Thursday. That's this next week. That's not even a whole week away. That's Thursday. Will we or will we not be leaving for Brexit on Thursday? So, and Brexit, oh my god, the things. Anyway, free Scotland. Scotland can stay in the EU. Honestly, I wish the referendum before the Brexit one hadn't been, should Scotland leave the Union? It should have been, should England leave the Union? And Scotland, Northern Ireland, and Wales get to vote. Because if England wants out of Europe, there's no reason they should drag the rest of us kicking and screaming. I mean, technically Wales voted to leave, but apparently it was the English people living just over the borders from England in Wales who outvoted the Welsh people, and that the predominantly Welsh communities all voted to stay in the EU, and the predominantly English communities voted to stay, or voted to leave the EU. So Wales gets to stay. England can go on their own. That's how I feel about that. The only other thing really of note for the last 2 weeks is that we had a tea party with the cousins. We went over to their house and they had made little sandwiches, and there were scones and a beautiful cake that turned everyone's tongues blue. And I think we had a really nice time. I don't think there were any particular missteps that weren't like, this is just how kids behave, and we will continue as a learning journey. But yeah, that was nice because Tulip hadn't gotten to see their new house yet, so she got to finally see the new house. Catherine and I had been there. We were there when the cousins arrived to give them the keys, and then we'd gone over one more time, so we'd been there twice, and Tulip was sad that she hadn't gotten to see their new house yet. And yeah, that was really nice. And other than that, we have mostly sat at home. Excuse me, the first week my children were going, let's go out and play, we have lots of energy, honest. I'm gonna lie down now. I'm like, yeah, no, you don't have any energy. And this last week has been me saying, I have no energy. I'm gonna go lie down now. So hopefully this cold will shift eventually. My husband still has it. Catherine still has it. Tulip's basically over it. She's always over colds a lot earlier than the other three of us. And I was saying to Chris tonight that I wonder if it's because we think Catherine has asthma, and Chris and I both have asthma. Like, Christina has absolutely no symptoms of asthma, so is it because she doesn't have asthma that she gets a cold and then she feels better, and we have asthma, so we just cough and cough and cough and cough and cough for the rest of our lives? Probably. Anyway, hopefully I will record an episode next week and I can talk about my new jumper or maybe some other new things. There'll be a new Boost Your Knitting project. I don't have quite enough wool to knit one. It's a child's jumper in the Marlisle technique. And the kit that I ordered came with enough to knit a 12 to 18 month child. And I need at least the 2 to 3 year old. So I need to order a little more yarn for that. And yeah, I will talk to you hopefully next week with lots of new things. No more trick-or-treat song. So happy Halloween and happy bonfire night if I don't manage. And yeah, thank you for joining me. It really means a lot to me if you watch. And I will talk to you next week. Thank you. Bye.